Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram
I know I tend to move slow. It's nice if we remember, we just do this for just a few moments, a few minutes, but it's nice to remember that Krishna has told us he's in his name, and in his name and not different. As we chant that name, we call him, and we're present, he's present, so we just stay present in Krishna's name. It's so nice. Anyway, and so I'm going to put in a plug. This is an infomercial. We do the Java program Saturday mornings at 7:30 on the Holy Same station here. But we've done several books, and now we're on the living names. This is the book by Sachidananda Swami. I find this book extremely powerful. It's so performatory. And so they have this book at the store. You hear, you know, see the Mother Jagannath. She has the book, and very wonderful. I bought so many of these books. I think I bought down close to 25 of these books. But they're very wonderful. So thanks for reading. Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 41. This chapter is entitled Karma Yoga. It's so funny, I was speaking, we had the class yesterday morning, and at the end of the class, I asked Rhoda something, and Rhoda made an announcement and told me I was giving class today. And I said, really? I was talking about spirit style. I didn't even realize. But I'm grateful to be here, to talk some about what I was doing. So, we're going to just go through the word for word. Tashmat,
Tashmat Tvam
Indriyani,
Indriyani
Adao,
Adao
Nyamya,
Nyamya
Bharta Shrishaba,
Bharta Sharshaba
Patmanam,
Patmanam
Prajahi,
Enam
Jnana,
Vijnana Nasanam Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao Niyamya Bharata Shrishaba
Patmanam Prajahi,
Patmanam Prajayenam Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
Tashmat Tvam Indriyanadao,
Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao
Niyamya Bharata
Niyamya Bharata Shrishaba
Patmanam Prajayenam,
Pratmanam Prahiyenam
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam.
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
Tasmat Tvam Indriyani Yadav
Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao
Niyamya Bharata Sabha
Niyamya Bharata Shrishaba
Bhakamanam Prajayenam
Pratmanam Prajayenam
Jnana Vijnana
Jnana Vijnana
Nasanam
Nasanam Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao Niyama Bharata Shrishaba Patmanam Prajahihenam Jnana Vijnana Nasanam Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao
Niyamya Bharatarshava
Niyamya Bharata Shrishaba
Patmanam Prajahiyenyam
Pratmanam Prajahiyenam
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
Mothers.
Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao
Tasmat Tvam Indriyanadao
Niyamya Bharatarshava
Niyamya Bharata Shrishaba
Patmanam Prajahiyenam
Pratmanam Prajahiyenam
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
Jnana Vijnana Nasanam
So translation. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bhartas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Purport and final liberation poem. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning, so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specific knowledge of the self. Jnana refers to knowledge of the self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Jnana refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and its relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained thus in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.31. Jnanam paramam me yadvijnana samantam sa rahashyam tat onam cha vihan vakam maya. Therefore, the knowledge of the self and supreme self is very confidential and mysterious. But such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the self. The living entities are parts and parcel of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following regulated principles of devotional service. So from any stage of life or from the time of understanding, it's always nice to come to discuss and talk about Bhagavad Gita. I can guarantee you, I never know how the conversation is going to work out, but it's okay. Just being able to hear the Gita from me and discuss it and hear from you, it's very, very exciting to me. So I'm grateful. So earlier on, I want to talk about something about the Gita. Earlier on in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna, as you all know, were friends. And very quickly, Arjuna decided to change the relationship, due to circumstances and the discharge of his duty and the bewilderment and perplexity that took place. Arjuna decided that he was going to become a disciple of Krishna. And Krishna eventually accepted that, and so the relationship changed. But it's interesting to me because as I listen to the Bhagavad Gita, I hear the relationship of Krishna and Arjuna taking place as Krishna is answering Arjuna's questions or just giving straight knowledge and enlightenment to Arjuna. Is so wonderful because he gives people
miracle vaccines in the
entire What is that?
We have miracle vaccines.
Miracle vaccines.
Entire world.
Well, these things happen. But the relationship is very, very exciting. And that's what Arjuna has. He has that relationship with Krishna. So, as we go on today, I don't know how my thing jumped over here, but I have to get back to page. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So you've been going through this section and you know what today's verses, but lust doesn't need that much of an introduction because all of us have some understanding, or many of us who've passed puberty have some experience of being bombarded by this lust factor. But it's interesting because it is so, the manifestation is so variegated. It's everywhere, you know. And what we don't take is lust. It's definitely lust, you know. But that's going to be explained a little later. So Arjuna, in that beginning of the conversation he had with Krishna, one of Arjuna's fears was he was afraid to incur sin. He was afraid that sin would overtake them in the discharge of his duty. So he was really afraid about the sin. And then I find here in the 3rd chapter, it comes up again, where he asked Krishna the question, what is it which causes a man to act sinfully? I'm going to go right to that verse. Right here, at 36. And I have to recap because it's all so close together. Arjuna said, O descendant of Rishi, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? That's the question he asked Krishna. And after Krishna told the supreme person of Godhead, said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. And he went on to explain, different degrees of how we're covered with this lust. And he said, thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. To call lust the enemy and our eternal enemy, I think that warrants our attention. And this is Krishna speaking. And last week, the senses of the mind and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So, it's quite strong. I was reading something earlier today, and I looked at the plight of the living entity with this lust, and I became a little sad. Because we expect to find happiness in the material world. We try happiness and peace. We try to raise our children, to have friendships, relationships with our friends, and we're really looking for a better situation. But to know that there's something always lurking around, trying to wreak havoc. It's one thing to know that these 3 modes of material nature are there, how they have such an influence, how they cover us. But then to know that from contact with the mode of passion, here's this lust. And it's the opposite of love. It's the perverted reflection of love. And it's just in a very sober point. It rattles me a little bit. I couldn't get past the fact that it does. But anyway, I saw something here in Surrender to Me, and it was so nice that I thought, rather than take Boy John's words, I wanted to share some of them. I wanted to give it straight. He's been a very dear friend, help along the way. So in this verse, Boy John was saying that the senses, mind and intelligence, the senses are the grossest. Being gross, they're easiest to control. Krishna, therefore, recommends that we begin to bring lust under control by regulating the senses. This is automatically done through the Vaidhi-Bhakti process. While controlling our senses, however, we should not neglect our intelligence. The intelligence, like guard, is the next door neighbor of the soul. And its business is to protect us from Maya. If the guard has been corrupted by lust, the situation is as dangerous as when a bodyguard is bribed by the enemy. Thus, the materially contaminated intelligence, which works in the service of our enemy, should be neglected. We should instead accept the intelligence of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So, that's also to be very, very strong, to know that this lust is sitting there, right there in the senses. And the senses, as explained earlier, the senses are like serpents that want to act loosely at any moment. So now we have to bring these senses under control. And the natural way is that once we become contaminated, it is very difficult to control the senses. So here's Srila Prabhupada begins to explain nicely in the purport. Srila Prabhupada says the enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places, so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. So, again, it's one thing to know that the lust is there, and that the lust is the enemy. But what are we going to do about it? How do we change the situation? And it's so nice to know that there's a society called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Because other than this process, which we encounter here, I have not a clue how I'd be able to control my senses and make an attempt to defeat this lust. And so with the intelligence is our discriminatory factor. And intelligence is supposed to protect us from this one sort of bondage to lust. But as explained, when the intelligence becomes contaminated, what do you do? So, in society itself, I think of the number of people who come to this Krishna consciousness movement and begin to hear these descriptions of the breakdown of lust, and it's everywhere within his body. You know, senses are strong enough. But at the same time, we live in society, and we're conditioned in such a way that so many things appear to be natural. And the last thing you need to do is to come to a process. This is constantly laying a guilt trip on you. So that doesn't feel good. But at the same time, knowledge or the truth is that which is spoken for the benefit of others, not for some political end. So knowledge is light. And I was thinking how to look at our plight in the material world. And if we look at it from a perspective that we're in a very, very dangerous situation, although it appears to be nice, but the situation is very dangerous. Therefore, as we take in this information, as we share this knowledge, then we take it as this is light, this is understanding coming. And as I can, I begin to adjust my lifestyle to become more like the lifestyle that I would like to have. That I can become more like it's explained in the scriptures as we go further. Because without trying to reconcile who we are, where we're at, the world we live in, and what is explained in the scriptures, it appears that it will be extremely difficult to work towards a goal. Therefore, look at it as just this is true. This is somewhat shocking, but then you give me the truth and a methodology which enables me to change the trajectory of my life. Everyone. You know, there's a stanza where Rabbi Shufu, who said one of his books, Immortal Longings, he said, no one likes to be the bearer of bad news. Kings routinely killed with a spot, half his messengers bringing words of defeat. He's like, yes, by now you realize I have some fairly unpleasant things to say. And again, it was the topic of lust. So I would just like our approach to be so different. Take the information for what it is, and then we try to adjust our lives in a way that we can bring about change. That being said, I'm going to go further in this scripture. Srila Prabhupada, they said some very nice things here. He said, in this verse, he says, intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself as matter. Thus, the mind and senses. And so, it is the misidentification. This is something that was brought up with Arjuna early on, that Krishna had to explain very clearly, and he went on and on to explain to Arjuna, you're not your body, you're the life force, you're a spirit soul. And I thought that was great. But as Krishna went on in this conversation, remember, we're here in the conversation, there's a relationship. As he went on later, that turned to Kshetra and Kshetriya, turned to the field of activity and the knower of this field of activity. And the supernova, which is the Lord within the heart. But aside from that, knowing that I'm not this body and that I'm eternal, spirit, soul is wonderful. But Lord Chaitanya helps us take it a little further, which is so much more exactly. Jivesu Bahaya Krishnari Nishidas. That I'm not this body, I'm spirit, soul, but I'm eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. And that really cuts the light on in the conversation. Because my identity, my true identity, is not this body. It's not with my nation, my family, my friends. It's that I'm an eternal servant of the Supreme. And that's strong. I either have to accept it, that is true, or I have to reject it. And if I accept it as true, what can I do from the position I'm at to bring about a change? And that is really why we're discussing these topics, to bring about a change. And as Srila Prabhupada explained earlier, he said that he told Arjuna, therefore, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust. But then Prabhupada said that it's better to get a start, because if you don't start from the beginning and then it's lost, it's very difficult to reestablish this, a lifestyle free from lust, or moving away from lust. But he also explained that this Krishna consciousness movement is so powerful that even if you're a late starter, even if you got on a path and you got off, it can change everything. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada is so, this system of worship that he set up was so inclusive. The regulative principles of freedom, Vaidhi Bhakti, which was explained in his work. Srila Prabhupada included it. All you have to do is attend a local center, a local temple. And that may not be the easiest, we've just come out of COVID, but if you can attend a local temple, even if you come over for a weekend stay, then there's the morning program. You get up early, take bath, and you come and you see their lordships. And there's time to chant the holy names of the Lord. There's worship of Tulsi. There's the attendance in Srimad Bhagavatam class. And what a process that is. Make your mother conceive. All those things is troublesome to the heart. Just like non-fruit becomes practically destroyed to them. So, along with that, you get to associate with devotees. You honor Krishna. And most important, you get to perform devotional service, which is the key. I've got some more good news for you. I'm going to read something else from right in the purport here. This purport takes us a different way, so I'm just going to read a part of it. It's from Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna speaks from. Let me try to write one. But it's very, very sweet. So, here's it's too much good stuff. It says, therefore, the regulative principles, and to attain the stage of transcendental love of Godhead, regulative principles of devotional service must be followed. The regulative principles are called Vaidhi Bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord. And they can be practiced by a neophyte with his present senses. Such regulative principles are mainly based on hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord. And such hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord can be made possible in the association of devotees only. Lord Chaitanya therefore recommended 5 main principles for attaining perfection in the devotional service of the Lord. The first is association with devotees hearing. Second is chanting the glories of the Lord. Third, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the pure devotee. Fourth, residing in a holy place, connected with the Lord. And fifth, worshiping the deity of the Lord with devotion. Such rules and regulations are parts of devotional service. So as requested by Lord Brahma, but in the beginning of this purport, the word Rahasya was explained here. And this Rahasya is a mystery or secret, you know. And Arjuna, when Krishna chose Arjuna to receive this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, he told him, Bhaktosi Vedachateti, because you are my bhakta, you're my devotee and friend, you can enter into the mystery of this science. So, and the word was Rash, mystery. But that mystery is love of Godhead. That mystery is love of Godhead. And in order to get that love of Godhead, one, Krishna has to give it. And two, we have to be engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Bhakshamam Anajanati, Yavam Kashashmi Tapitaha. Krishna says, one can know me as I am, as the Supreme Person of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full union with me, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So, this devotional service is very, very important. Devotional service is very powerful. Because when we think about lust being all over the place, the mind, the senses, the intelligence, you know, it's everywhere. But devotional service is so powerful that it cleanses, just like the holy name, Dr. Marginal cleanses the heart of all that accumulated dirt, all those unwanted things, all those narcs. Those things become cleansed from the heart. I intend in the holy name of the Lord, and the same result is there in pure devotional service, as expressed again in the Bhagavatam in the third canto. Pure devotional service is so powerful that the contamination of the body, the mind, intelligence, it completely, it gets rid of the entire soul body. This is the power of devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada has given us a methodology by coming to this temple, any of the temples, by taking this practice to your home, by learning to associate amongst yourselves or ourselves. This problem of lust no longer becomes our problem because the senses are engaged in the service of the master of the senses, Rishikesh. And as we engage in that way, no problem. It's so nice to know that there is a methodology which can protect us from this lust. Later in the Gita, it says that in the fourth chapter, it says, this knowledge was given to the heads of all states, kings of all planets. Why? To protect citizens from the onslaught of bondage to lust. So this knowledge was there within society. It came from the top, and it was infiltrated. But no such situation exists today. Today, you're taught in our society, if it feels good, continue to do it. You know, life is to enjoy. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, when he was coming here, he was coming to Boston Harbor, and he saw a picture of a woman and liquor, and we see the dice. And Srila Prabhupada was pushed to prayer. He said, oh my Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna, you know, how will they be able to understand my words when the very sinful pillars of life are being advertised on billboards? How will they? He said, but if you've had some reason for bringing me here, so I'm just a puppet in your hands, and if you like, you can make me dance. Make me dance. Make me dance if you like. But Prabhupada was thinking, how will they be able to understand my words? So I too, as a little teeny insignificant person, think when we go to talk like this, I said, how will they understand without thinking that I'm sitting here laying a trick on people about lust? It's not something that's foreign to me. It's something that I have to deal with. I have this body. But at the same time, we share this because we all are in this together. That's the Sankirtan movement. The Sankirtan movement is we move forward together. We take shelter of the process. We chant the names. We read the literatures. We take prasada. We undergo different loving exchanges. And we find that as we engage in this way, it's burned up in that fire. It really works. Because I was a young boy from South Philadelphia, right here in Philadelphia. And I can remember the fire that was always there within me. And by the grace of Guru and Krishna, I stumbled into a process which changed my life. And so as it changes my life, I see that if we work together, all of our lives can be changed. And as we hear these descriptions in the scriptures, they're not exaggerated, they're not out of date, they're exactly what we need to understand. And as we apply the methodology, then we too can stand up and say, yes, it works. But the main gift that we've been given is the way we started this class. We simply sit down and we chant this Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I can tell you, everything is there. I'm always forgetting, but everything is there. And to the extent that we become frustrated and we keep trying, it brings us to the point of prayer. It brings us to the point of understanding that I can't do this properly without your help. Krishna, I need help. Srila Prabhupada, I need help. And so, in that state, the closest thing there, one of the objects of knowledge, it flows to us. Humility. We become a little humble when we realize that we're just not that good, that we really need help. And so we chant this name in a humble state of mind. As we chant like that, we won't become overnight sensations, but it happens. It works. We just keep pouring ink. We keep pouring milk in that big glass of ink. More milk, more milk, more milk. Keep putting the milk in the glass of ink. And when you look up, it'll be baby blue. You keep pouring the milk in the glass of ink. Keep chanting the rounds. Keep hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Keep engaging in devotional service. And one of the best things you can do is serve the devotees. Do not find fault with the devotees. To the extent that we continue to work in this way, this becomes a very happy place. We don't care if we live or die. We're not so worried. We just want to continue with our devotional service. And so lust, yeah, it's there. But more important than lust is love. Love is there. And love is what we're really about. It's right there. It's right so close to us. We just have to reach for it. Krishna, personification, that's love. Not good poetry. Real love is there. And we will find it if we listen closely to the Bhagavad Gita. We too will understand that in order to hear the Bhagavad Gita properly and to make advancement, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to pull a page out of Arjuna's life. We're going to have a relationship with Krishna. If you sort back, he's the self of the self. He's here as a super soul, never leaving us. Can you imagine someone so in love with you that no matter what you do, they stay there with you, they go wherever you go? That's Krishna. He's right there. Just like we hear the mind constantly, we hear the mind. If we try to do things, the devotional practices, the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti, the regulated devotional service, avoid sinful activities, don't engage in this activity. And if we do, try to stop. Don't take intoxication. If you do, try to stop. Eating the dead animals, change. So the more that we move forward in this way, then the modes of passion and ignorance, they can subside. And from our new practice, from our new regulation, we become more situated in goodness. Instead of going down, we're moving up. And we hear from a different perspective. We see things differently. And just as we hear the mind, we begin to hear the Lord within the heart. He's trying to talk to us. He's trying to get our attention. We can hear the form of intelligence. It tells us exactly what to do. But we have to be keen. We have to want to hear. So it starts with that relationship. So Anyway, Arjuna has a relationship. You can go through the Bhagavad Gita and watch that relationship unfold. I'm not interested so much in lust. I'm interested in love. I'm interested in resolve. And so maybe I stop here. If there's some comment, some question, we can do it at this time. Hare Krishna, thanks so very much.
Hare Krishna. Are there any questions? We just have a few minutes. So I want to ask you about the guard that was given in the analogy, that the guard, when the guard becomes compromised, and then it said, therefore we should listen to not our contaminated intelligence, our compromised intelligence, but the intelligence through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra.
Yes.
Can you speak on that?
Well, you know, so many of us think that we're really, a lot of times we think we're smart, and sometimes we do have material intelligence. It's there. But it won't, our problem is spiritual. Our problem is not material. Our problem is that we are being bombarded by something stronger than us. Therefore, you know, we need a stronger dose, we need stronger medicine. And that is, we need Guru and Krishna. The Shastra, if we regularly hear, then it sharpens our intelligence. It's like having arrows. If you hear regularly, then when you need that verse, it comes up. And it dissipates the illusion. That's from hearing. And from serving the Guru, you can see how that's happening here. Arjuna is approaching Krishna as his Guru. And therefore, he's becoming enlightened and enlightened. And so the intelligence changes. Krishna told Arjuna, when your intelligence is past how things are, far as evolution, you'll become indifferent to all that you've heard, all that you've understood. So, real intelligence, our real discriminatory power, comes from the Shastras. You know, that's our hierarchical understanding. And our real authority is Guru. So, Guru, Sadhu, it's always the balance there. So Guru gives the direction, the Shastra confirms it, and we follow it. And eventually, from engaging in that way, the intelligence becomes Krishnized, you know, and everything changes. So that compromised guard, he's only compromised so long as we associate with the influences of material nature. But once we take direction from a higher authority, remember, the mind is always in want of some superior dictation. The contaminated mind contaminates the intelligence. When the mind is in goodness, intelligence, and passion, but the intelligence has to be a discriminatory factor. So if it doesn't have that power, it doesn't work. So that's the line. You constantly hear, follow the instructions of the spiritual master, and avoid that illicit connection. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's time.
Time for Artik.
Hare
Hare Krishna.